The Bills have 10 new players from the 2024 draft class, and we're going to break it all down for you on this episode of Circling the Wagons.
Hi, I'm Bills defensive end Greg Rousseau, and you're listening to Nate and the Fellas on Circling the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills!
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo! Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo!
The Bills make me wanna shout!
Welcome to the Circling the Wagons podcast, a podcast discussing the Bills all year round with interviews, news, recaps, and insightful fan discussion. Most times. Here's your host and lifelong Bills fan, Nate.
Hey, Bills Mafia. Welcome to this special draft recap episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo Bills fan podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and there is a ton to discuss in this episode. We have every single pick. We're going to give general thoughts on the draft class. We're going to grade it. I have some reports from other people who have scouted these players, thoughts from them, and we'll kind of discuss it. Just a lot of things of what we think of these players, where we could see them fitting into the roster or potential path to starting. And lots of trades this past weekend that we're going to discuss. But first, I'm joined by my co-hosts, John and Mike, to discuss the draft. John, I'll start with you. John, are you ready to discuss the newest members of the Buffalo Bills roster?
I'm ready. Let's go. Let's do it.
Mike, are you ready? After we got together Thursday night for the first round, and there was it was the most anticlimactic first round ever. Yeah, you ready?
I'm ready. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks, John, for hosting us. That was fun. For real quick, John had us both over and made these amazing nachos. Just like he puts. John, you'd have to break it down, but like there's queso, chorizo on the nachos. There's avocado slices. There's tomatoes, onions. I don't know. It's the best plate of nachos I've ever had in my entire life by far. Did I miss something? I missed some ingredients.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
It is. When we used to go to Del Lago and get those chips there, I remember thinking the whole time, I just wish I was having John's nachos. These are trash.
That's what I made when we used to do the Monday Night Pokers. Those are the same ones.
Yeah. They're almost like nostalgia nachos because we used to do it like right out of college. We used to get together every Monday and play poker and watch Monday Night Football, right? Like, so maybe that's part of the appeal is the nostalgia for me. So two-tiered. But anyway, so let's talk about this draft. Bills have 10 picks. We're going to go over each one of them. I'm going to list them out real quick right now just to summarize each and every pick in which round they were picked. So first we have the first pick by the Buffalo Bills was in the second round, the very top of the second round. It was wide receiver Keon Coleman. Second round pick, and also the second pick for the Bills was Cole Bishop, the safety out of BYU. We have the round 3 pick, which was DeWayne Carter, the defensive tackle out of Duke. The 4th round pick was Ray Davis, running back out of University of Kentucky. 5th round pick, the first of 3 5th round picks, was Cedric Van Pran-Granger, and he is the center out of the University of Georgia. We have Edefwan Alofosio, the linebacker out of Washington. I got that one, see? And then the 3rd, 5th round pick was Javon Solomon, the linebacker out of Troy. We have Tylen. So they say he's a linebacker, but I think he was more of a pass rushing linebacker, Troy. So I guess he'd more, project to be the edge player. We'll get into that. But we also, in the 6th round, we have Tylen Grable, the offensive tackle out of UCF. Then we have Daquan Hardy, the cornerback out of Penn State at the second 6th round pick. And then the last pick of the Bills draft, Travis Clayton, the interior offensive lineman from England. So it's a bit cheeky, isn't it? Right? Anyway, so we're going to talk about
Hello, Governor.
What would be a good day, mate? No, that's Australian. Get another shrimp on the bobby. Oh man.
Well, he did.
What are you going to say? Would be a good nickname?
Yeah, what would be a good nickname for him?
For which guy?
Let's see. Travis Clayton, the center from England. Travis Clayton.
So he did play Australian rules football. Also, he was a boxer too.
Oh, Australian rules football. I wonder what Australian rules football is.
Rugby.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's rugby. Okay.
I think it's the same thing, right?
Do you imagine, like, 6'7", 300 pounds is tough enough with pads on? Do you imagine if that guy was coming at you and you had no pads to protect you from him? Like, yikes.
Yeah, it's funny when they picked him. I was watching highlights and no pads and they're just running around with the ball, and it's like, oh, jeez.
Christian Wade was the last player right from the UK, so it kind of makes me think of that when I see him.
I had that thought too, and I remember that preseason that one of his first touches, it might have been the first one, he took it back to the end zone and everything. But
well, since this isn't the International Pathway Program, there may be more of a chance that he makes the roster or at least gets stashed on the practice squad, right? So there's an actual shot because he was actually drafted instead of just being part of that program. So it'll be interesting.
The Bulldog.
Oh, I like it. The Bulldog. Isn't there a boxing day in England? Isn't that a thing? Boxing, and he's a boxer. Boxing Day?
Definitely Canada, there's a boxing.
Oh, Canada. I get those two confused sometimes. They both worship the same queen and king and whatever. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it could be for both, right? I don't know.
Yeah, true. That's what happens when you're a sovereign state instead of your own country. You have to pay attention to the holidays across the pond. I wouldn't know anything about that, though. Wouldn't know. Ever since we handed England that L back in 1776, or 1781. I don't know. Whenever that war ended, it started in 1776. But yeah.
I'm going to ask ChatGPT.
Yeah. For a nickname for Travis Clayton?
The Tower, playing off his stature and invoking the iconic Tower of London.
Yes! Oh my God, ChatGPT is so much better at this than us. From now on, when we want to come up with nicknames, just come up with one, but don't say it's ChatGPT.
Okay.
The Tower. I love it. I'm going to try to spread that all over social media as if that was us.
It is us.
It's us. Cool, man.
But it seems unlikely that he's going to make the roster and maybe even the practice squad just because he doesn't have any American football experience, really.
Oh, so unlikely.
But it would be a great story if he did make it. And I mean, obviously he's amazing size. They're going to try him out for offensive line, but I thought it was interesting they drafted 3 offensive linemen when they already had 12 on the roster, and it seemed like it was kind of set. And then for undrafted free agents, they brought in 3 more guys. So I know it's one of those positions you can't have enough of, but it seems like a lot. So he's going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to make the roster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't see him making the roster necessarily this year. It's probably going to be more of a practice squad stash. But let's talk about the draft class in general. If you had to grade it, what grade would you give it in general? And this includes the trades and everything like that. And for all intents and purposes, the trades that the Bills went through, they traded back several times. In the first round. Obviously, they traded back from 28 to 32, and then from 32 to 33. So the first trade was with the Chiefs, when the Chiefs got Xavier Worthy. And then the second one was when the Panthers moved up to get Xavier Legette. And then the Bills picked Keon Coleman. So all those things considered, the Bills got a 4th-round pick from Chicago. Later in the draft, when they traded with Chicago, they traded their 5th-round pick to get Chicago's 2025 4th-round pick. So definitely some wheeling and dealing. Not only was the wheeling and dealing happening, but Brandon Beane didn't move up once this draft. So this is a big thing. He's never moved up in the first round, or he's never traded back in the first round. So this was his first time doing that, but then he never traded up in general. He kept trading back or stayed at his position. So kind of interesting. We think we have a beat on these guys, man, but it's kind of refreshing that they surprise us. I mean, they never used a higher than a 5th round pick on a wide receiver before this last draft. So it's good. It's good. They're not stuck in one area. They're willing to do things that they haven't done before. So that's good. If I was to give a grade for this draft class in general, I want to give it like a B+. I gave it a B+ because they traded back, they moved up in certain rounds, they got some good picks. I didn't love Keon Coleman, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So him being their first pick, but I definitely see the reasoning why, and I can definitely swallow it a lot better at 33 with an extra third round pick and moving up a bunch of. I can swallow it all, John. Like there's no amount of Keon Coleman. No, that sounds weird. So it was a lot easier to take because of all those things. So they got an extra third round pick from moving back. I mean, I like that it filled a lot of needs. They filled a lot of needs at the very top of their draft too, you could mention. And then they filled in some really good depth pieces, some promising pieces that maybe they don't, get starting roles anytime soon, but they can contribute right away to special teams like they usually do. But there is a path for some of these guys to get some snaps this season and also make the roster even later into the thing. Now, the one of the reasons I'll give it a B+ instead of an A is because I was hoping that they would double dip at wide receiver, and they did not do that. We were talking about them double dipping at wide receiver since the end of the season. We're like, this is a deep class. Grab 2 of them just to do it, and let's hope one of them pans out. The Bills have double dipped before. They double dipped at defensive end when they took Greg Rousseau and Boogie Basham. They double dipped with Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle at offensive tackle that one year. So they're Kyer Elam, Christian Benford, like they've done it plenty of times. This was a perfect draft, I thought, to do that, but they must not have liked any of the value that was there. So if they had gone double dip, I would have moved it to an A, but B+, I'm still really happy with the draft. John, I'll let you go next. What were your thoughts? What would you grade this draft?
I'm giving it a B. I thought it was really good overall, especially the first 3 picks. Keon Coleman, I thought is a solid A. I know we talked about a lot of different receivers for their first pick, and I think Coleman was in the same tier as a lot of them. I know I was talking about A.D. Mitchell a lot. You were talking about McConkey. There are a few other guys in the mix, but I think after Brian Thomas, all those guys that we're talking about are kind of in the same tier. So for them to trade back twice and still get one of those guys, I think is really good. So that and him in particular, that's an A for me, or A+ even. Cole Bishop, I like a lot. That's like him alone is probably B+, I'd say grade. When the Bills took Coleman, I was thinking, should they take Cooper DeJean instead? Because that was on my mind, but I'd rather have Coleman and then Bishop than DeJean and then whoever they would have ended up with at receiver later. So I think they did well there. And then DeWayne Carter, I think that's another B+. He's super powerful and strong, and I think that's going to be really good in the rotation. Going back up, Coleman starting right away. Bishop is going to play for sure right away. I don't know if he's going to start. I think he might compete with Rapp to start, but he's going to play. And then Carter is going to be in that rotation. So those first 3 picks, I think, were really good. After that, I think they got lots of good value, even though I'm skeptical about, they drafted 3. I don't think they drafted enough defense necessarily, and then the running back in the 4th round. You know how I feel about running backs, and the guy's going to be 25 during the season, so that's not good from my perspective. I don't like drafting running backs, especially if they're that old, even if it's in the 4th round. But they got that linebacker who that is good depth, I think. Will play special teams. The edge guy that you talked about / linebacker, that's interesting. That cornerback that they drafted, he could be a punt returner as well. They're going to need more of that kind of thing with the new kickoff rules. I don't know who their kick returner is going to be when we start the season. But as far as like the needs that they met, I think they met almost all of their needs, other than like more special teamers, maybe competition for kicker. I know one of the undrafted free agents was a punter, so that will be good competition for punter. But overall, I think it's a solid B. You said B+. That sounds good too.
What would it have taken for you to give it an A in this draft? Not draft that 4th round running back who's 25 years old? I mean, what would it take? Less offensive linemen, more defensive players? I mean, because they hit on all of our needs. I mean, we had defensive tackle, defensive end, safety, linebacker. I mean, they hit on all those. So it's like,
yeah. So I mean,
another wide receiver, right?
Yeah, that's I even before the Diggs trade, we're talking about them needing to draft 2 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
That was before the Diggs trade. And
Especially
I get that.
this draft. Especially this draft.
Yeah, so no, I'm good at a or a B plus, like you said. It wasn't perfect, but I think it was really good. And they actually drafted 10 players, which is good because they need the depth. And next year they got extra draft picks already. They got 2 seconds, 2 fourths, 2 sixths. So they're set up well for the next couple of years. And the Bills' offense from last year is largely intact, minus Diggs. But they added Coleman, minus
Davis.
Morris, but they shifted the offensive line a little bit. Like the offense is largely intact. It's the defense that got gutted a little bit with the aging and injured veterans. And they did get Cole Bishop. They got a couple of guys late for depth. I think they're hoping that Von Miller is going to be good to go when we start the season.
Yeah,
Milano's going to be back, right? And Bernard, like the linebackers are going to be really good.
Yeah, and the Bills took a Matt Milano-like linebacker in this draft in Edefwan Olafosio. Yeah, Mike, have ChatGPT come up with a nickname for him. Edefwan Olafosio, because that's a tough one. Foshi Olaf, the UFO. Oh man, I don't know. That's a tough one. But yeah, I like John. Mike, your thoughts? Like, if you had to give this draft a grade. I mean, thank God we're not like the Falcons. We're not Falcons fans where they, gave Kirk Cousins a $180 million contract and then they draft his replacement in the first round. Like it feels good. It feels good just from that perspective that it feels like we have a GM that knows what the hell he's doing. I know we've thought that for a while, but like it's reiterated. Like I think every draft, sure, there's a few guys that you fall in love with. You won't get everyone that you probably won't get hardly anyone that you have a draft crush on, right? I mean, that's just the reality of like, we loved Xavier Legette, or I did at least, and the Bills just didn't like him. They didn't like him that much because they had 2 shots at him and they didn't want him. So yeah, Mike, what about your thoughts on the draft, or if you had to give it a grade?
It's an A for me. It starts and ends at the top, and I really like Coleman, and I like Bishop, and Carter's all right.
This is with Bishop. So like, let's go down. So John, I'll ask you what your least favorite pick is of the draft. And I feel like you're going to say
the running back,
but he didn't draft him in the first round.
What's his name? Ray Davis. Yeah, that's my least favorite pick.
But doesn't he? So this is what I'll say to this.
Okay. Nope.
If he's 25, he's very old, but he's not a first round pick.
He's 24, but to be fair, he's going to be 25 during the season. But yeah, he's old for a running back already.
Jeez, yeah, that's really old. But what I will say is it's a 4th round pick. At least it's not like a 1st round or a 2nd round pick, right? Like it wasn't, it wasn't an early pick.
It's an improvement. Like back during the drought, we're spending 1st and 2nd round picks on running backs. Then during the Bean era, at least the first Josh Allen window, they're doing 2nd and 3rd round picks. Now during the 2nd Josh Allen window is a 4th round pick. Okay, so it's a little bit better.
But if you had to think about like a guy that you wanted as your running back to complement James Cook, I mean, doesn't this guy like fit the bill 100%? Just that like he's not a superb athlete completely, but if he was, and he had his stats with as many touchdowns. I mean, he led the team in rushing with 3 different teams, including a team in the SEC. Like he's a bit between the tackles, pounded up the middle kind of runner, and he can hit the open. I mean, he's kind of reminds me a little bit of like a more between the tackles Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary wasn't a superb athlete, right? He wasn't a 4.4 athlete, and this guy is not either. I think he's like a 4.5 something, but he's like a bowling ball, right? Like it kind of reminds me a little bit of Travis Henry, just not his elusiveness,
I feel like the NFL kind of agrees with me on this. There was a run on running backs in the 4th round where back when we were growing up, the run would have been in the 1st and 2nd round.
Oh yeah. Dude, you were screwed if you didn't take your running back in the 2nd round.
It's completely different these days. And that's part of the reason why it's like, just do dime a dozen. Just get one in the 7th round or undrafted, whatever. Fred Jackson was undrafted. He was amazing. He was just as good as Spiller.
So I think what it
But
comes
again,
down, what it comes down to, John, is you're just pissed that they even used a draft pick on a running back. You're like anti running back in general, like using like just pick up undrafted free agents like every time,
if
right?
they at
Like
least slated one more round, because they had like 4 5th-round draft picks. So I was hoping that 4th-round pick would have been.
a wide receiver.
But I mean, I had been, looking at it and reading the, all the articles and listening to people, which is dangerous. But like a lot of people were saying, like towards the end of the 4th round, there was a big drop off in basically the whole draft.
So
So maybe there's like, all right, well now running backs are the next biggest thing because there's everybody else has dropped off at this point. Nobody took a running back yet, so that could have been a thing. Maybe I don't know.
So this is what Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports says. He said about Ray Davis, compact, older running back with plus stop-start ability, married to his feet well, can deploy multiple cuts in a run to make defenders miss. Good, not amazing overall elusiveness, though. Quicker than fast, too. Will work hard to fight through contact. Has the skills to be a fine complementary running back in the NFL. He gave that specific pick a C. So he's more on your level with that one. So yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I just don't hate it. I mean, I don't really hate any of these picks, so I can't really go through it. But let's start at the top. I just wanted to ask you because I knew you wanted to talk about Ray Davis. One thing I will say, because we won't talk about him later because we're going so much into depth right now, is like he has a very interesting story. Like, I'm sure you heard a little bit about it. Like the fact that he was homeless at one point, he grew up in a foster. He's like one of like 12 kids in his family. Like it is pretty amazing what he's had to overcome, to get where he is. It's almost like if you hear about like one of his teammates' family brought him in and like didn't adopt him necessarily, but allowed him to live with them and, stay there and stuff like that. Like, it's almost like a blindside sort of story for Ray Davis. So it's very hard to, and I know that we can't, talk about all these personal stories as if it matters on the field, but I don't know, as a person, as a human being, as a fan, like I like these stories. And I know you're not knocking it by saying that you didn't love the pick. And I know that's not what you're saying, but like, I didn't mind the pick. I didn't love it. I'm with you, John, more so than like loving it. Like I get the pick. I get why they did it. And that's the kind of player we were looking for. But like you said, I'm sure there were guys that we could have gotten later that maybe would have been just as fine in the 5th or 6th or 7th round or undrafted potentially. But
well, they did get undrafted guy, Frank Gore Jr.
Frank Gore, the second coming, man.
Like his dad just retired only 4 years ago.
That's crazy.
They were this close to playing together on a team.
Oh man, that's crazy. Frank Gore like played into what, his mid 30s, late 30s. He's with the Bills when he was like 36, I want to say.
And then he played with the Jets a year after us.
That's crazy.
I think, right?
Yeah, I remember his son like committed to UB or something at that point, or something in that area. He committed to somewhere else, but like while he was playing with the Bills, which is crazy to think about. Let's talk about each draft pick. First off, Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman, to me, I don't know if you guys like this comp or not. I like to try to think about players that we've got in terms of sometimes players that we've had before. And in this case, he reminds me a little bit of Gabe Davis because he's that bigger guy. I mean, he is, 6'4", 215 pounds. So big dude, very big. He's much bigger than Gabe Davis, really. And he's not like faster than Gabe Davis or anything like that, but he's much more reliable than Gabe Davis as catching the ball. He's better with his hands. He's got better route running than Gabe Davis. Like to me, I guess I'm saying he's an upgrade version of Gabe Davis. I think that's what he could be. If everything goes well with him. Again, we don't know how any of these guys could turn up. The 7th round pick, Travis Clayton, could be an all-pro offensive tackle or something. We have no idea what's going to happen with these guys. But on the outside looking in, to me, I'm like, this is a better version of Gabe Davis, and I'm excited about that. Do we have another Stephon Diggs to replace Stephon Diggs? I mean, maybe in Khalil Shakir or Curtis Samuel, we're going to have to look for one. I don't think we have a top 10 receiver on this team necessarily, but I don't think you necessarily need one to win games and to win the division again. So I really like that pick. Any other thoughts on Keon Coleman? I mean, if you haven't seen his interview, it's unbelievable, but Any other thoughts on Keon Coleman, the pick or anything like that?
Yeah, I think.
How about
I
this?
think
The lantern. Huh?
For Keon Coleman? Oh, because
Yeah.
Coleman Lantern.
It lights up the game.
Yeah. Okay. The camp.
Or whatever. You got something better?
The Coleman, isn't there? Doesn't Coleman also make those like propane grills too? Like they make lanterns and make the camp.
Anything to do with camping, I feel they'd slap their name on it.
Yes. It's a good niche. Good niche to be in.
Yeah.
It's not like Weber is over there like making grills for camping. It's Coleman.
If he was a cornerback, though, it could be like the tent, the canopy,
Yes.
the
Yes,
cooler.
the cooler.
It could be so many more things.
Yes. But because he's a wide
But
receiver.
stuck with lantern.
I thought you at first I thought like Green Lantern. I'm like, oh, there's something I don't understand about that superhero. I don't really know anything about Green Lantern. I'm like, nope, it's camping. There's got to be something like in camping in general, but it has to be specific to a camping camping appliance. So right, like to be, it couldn't just be like
Campfire?
campfire or anything like that. Camp grill,
It could be.
the propane
and propane
Train?
accessories.
propane accessories. Is that what you said? The King of the Hill reference. Nice.
Yeah.
The coal train?
Propane Coltrane. Isn't Coltrane after like a jazz musician?
I think he's big and powerful. Like a
Oh,
train.
like an actual coal train. Okay.
That would be better for Beasley than the other thing that you had.
All right, John. You know what? You don't need to bring Beasley hasn't been on this team in like 2 years.
I was hoping he's not going to go down the third and coal route for this guy.
Says the guy who says lantern.
Third and Coleman.
Third and Coleman. Oh man. John.
Damn it.
John.
I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh man, mind blown. Thank you. Okay, well it's decided. All right. So Keon, there's got to be something like Keon. Remember Deion Sanders? Didn't he have Neon Dion, like Neon Keon or something like that? High stepping? No, that doesn't make sense.
We've got that Macy's jacket. We can work that into it.
The Macy's jacket. That was a fun press conference. John, tell the listeners what he said about his Macy's jacket, just in case they didn't.
He said he got it from Macy's. And then he got a good deal on it. he gets them 2 seasons in advance when it's cheaper, and that's what his mom does. And no, dude, he interviewed really well. Not just that, in a couple other places that I was listening. Very well spoken for a 20-year-old. I mean, he's going to turn 21 before the season, but I thought he was great. Like he had like a nice, fun vibe to him, and I thought it was good.
Dude, he is like the perfect mixture of confident but not arrogant and like funny, right? Like he's very, very confident in what he can do, but he's not like I'm the best out there. He's just like he seems humble but confident. You know what I mean? Like he's like I can do all these things, but he's not like nobody else can possibly do it. I don't belong. I'm so much better. It's just he's funny, like you said, the Macy's Day. That's just financially responsible, right? Like buying the coat, 2 seasons in advance because you get it for.
Yeah, but then he said he was going to go back and buy all these other colors. That's not financially responsible.
Well, he needed to get Bill's colors, I think is what he was getting at.
Well, he saved so much money on that one, he can afford 2 more. Normally they're
You only wear
$400.
one coat at a time. He should just get a Bill's coat rather than all these different colors, and they'll give him one for free.
Yeah, see, notice that's how good a guy he is. He didn't say, hey, you guys are probably going to give me a jacket too, right? Like they will. They'll probably give him a dozen Bill's jackets. But did you see the thing about the cookies too?
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's like, y'all mind if I have some of those? He goes over to like the press table or whatever, and he picks up a bag like those. Like he picked a good thing. I think they were the Wegmans like just baked cookies, like the ones that are like $15 for 10 of them or something like that. It's ridiculous, but they're amazing. They're like the best cookies ever. He's a very likable. Isn't that? Did you ever think like when you're listening to him talk? You're like, this is going to be perfect for Josh Allen because like Stephon Diggs was like goofy at times or whatever, but like he wasn't just a goofy guy. He was like cool, funny, right? Like, and then, it wasn't till he wasn't funny at all, till he was, combative. So like with Keon, like it just, it
Keon is
seems like a
like
perfect match.
Keon
For the
Dawkins
personalities.
vibes,
Yes.
Tre'Davious White vibes, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. A goofball, right? Like a goofball, like that's. But they're all like really good at what they do. Yeah, like Josh is a goofball. Dion, yeah, I love those analogies. Dion, Tre'Davious White, yeah, for sure. So very likable guy. I like it. I like it because, I talked about adding Ladd McConkey, to the Bills wide receiver group, and I'm like, well, it's kind of like a trio of the same kind of guys. Not very tall, but like not very big, but like all skilled route runners, and like maybe some yards after the catch. But like with this guy, like Keon's definitely different than all of these. He brings something that they did not have on their wide receiving core specifically. So I'm excited about that. I wanted that, and I'm glad that they got him a little bit later. They didn't have to trade up for him or anything like that. So, I mean,
yeah. When was the last time they had a big guy like that? That was really good.
I mean, they haven't, have they?
Like Molds, maybe? What? Like how big was Molds?
Molds was not 6'4". He was probably like 6'1" or something like that. Yeah.
Right, he wasn't that big, but like I'm just
6'2".
trying to think like the biggest guy they've had since
James Hardy. James Hardy was
whenever. That was good.
Oh, that was good. Okay. Oh well, you didn't give me that that asterisk. That was halfway decent. Oh well, then never they've had. I don't think they've ever had a guy that size, even close to that size. Gabe Davis was good, but I think he was still 6'2".
Like they and I guess they haven't even tried that much either. Like I guess Hardy and Davis, but they haven't tried all that hard to get a big guy like that.
No.
I
mean, Justin Shorter last year, I think he's
20
like 6'4"
something years. Yeah,
he's 6'4" or something like that. But yeah,
he was a fifth round pick, and he got hurt, and they didn't really. And it almost seemed like they didn't try to keep him on the roster. They're like, "Well, okay, we'll keep you on injured reserve because he got hurt." Type of thing.
6'4". Justin Shorter, 6'4", 223 pounds. So yeah. But to your point, they've never had a good one, and they've never had a proven one. I mean, Keon Coleman is going to be getting plenty of snaps this season. Justin Shorter might not make the team. I mean, that's the difference, right? So the good thing about Keon Coleman too, just in talking about that, is that he really does use his catch radius to he has some highlight level catches, right? Like, I mean, you watch him, and he has an Odell Beckham Jr. catch. I think it was against Syracuse or something, where he caught it one hand behind his back, like amazing catches. Like
his contested catches are amazing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
His biggest. The only reason he fell, I think, is because he ran a 4.6, and like the difference between, in my mind, a 4.4 and a 4.6 doesn't seem like much. So I don't know why that would drop you 20 places in the draft, but like Jerry Rice ran a 4.8.
Oh, he did,
and he's the best of all time. So it's really about play speed, and I'm not worried about that part of it. I'm not worried about the speed. I think he's going to be fine.
Someone asked him at the press conference, what do you have to say about speed? Like, people say that, he's like, I don't remember a defensive back ever catching me from behind. So that's
there you go.
Okay. All right.
He's also playing as, it'll be different when he's in the NFL.
Yeah. A little bit different. It's not the ACC, it is a little bit different for sure. But I mean, I can't really argue with that.
But yeah, like I'm not worried about the speed. And like people are saying, because of I think they're implicating he won't get as good separation because of the speed, and it's like what's 0.2 on a 40? Like that's nothing. Like 4.6, 4.4, and all of a sudden you're down. I don't get it. I don't get some of those things sometimes, especially when a lot of the other drills were very impressive, and then you just look at the film and the tape, it's great. So
yeah, I mean, people say that he's not an amazing route runner, but he's not bad at all. Like he's not maybe as good as a Ladd McConkey or something like that, but he's good, and he could get better. Like he's twitchier than you would think at that big of a size. And like we were just talking about contested catches, like one thing I like about him is that he does use his size. Like how many scouting reports do you see of a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", and they're like, he doesn't play to his size, and you're just like, well, what the hell's the point of being 6'4"? Like I thought about that with Quentin Johnson last year. They're like, oh, but he's 6'4". It's just like, yeah, but who cares if the guy doesn't play to that size? He might as well be 5'10"
last year.
No.
Yep.
No, so that always scares me, but that was never the scouting report on Keon Coleman. You were saying how Ray Davis is old. Keon Coleman right now is only 20 years old. Like, so there's a lot.
Exactly.
His ceiling could potentially be a lot higher. And he was a two-sport athlete. He played basketball.
Yeah, he's like 4.5 years younger than the running back they drafted. How crazy is that?
John, you don't have to keep talking about Ray Davis this way. Ray.
I mean, I like Ray Davis. I just don't like what
Sounds like you hate him. Sounds like you don't care about his story. Like you're very, very heartless.
I just don't like what the Bills do with running backs over the last forever years. But
no, that's not you. You've been hurt. Don't feel bad. You've been hurt. It's not your fault. And I'm like, Will or what's his name? Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault, John. And you're like, yeah, Nate, I know it's not your fault. Let's go into so we all pretty much like the Keon Coleman pick. Second pick was Cole Bishop, the safety out of BYU. Dalton Kincaid's former teammate. There was a press conference, or there was a Brandon Beane talked to Cole Bishop before he drafted him and said, "Oh, what was it like lining up with Dalton Kincaid?" He's like, "Oh, Kincaid's really good." He's like, "Who got the best of those matchups at practice?" He's like, "Oh, I did, 100%." So then he texted, Dalton Kincaid. He's like, this before he drafted him. He's like, this guy says he got the best of you in practice. Is that true? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, he did. And you're like, well, that sounds amazing. So the Bills, get a guy that, and we love Dalton Kincaid. So you're like, if you had a guy on your team that could cover Dalton Kincaid, like that's a great player to have.
Yeah, for sure. So I had we were talking about rookies, the weeks before the draft, and I had receiver lists and safety lists and all these other maybe only 4 or 5 positions that I cared about. Safety was one of them, and I had next to Cole Bishop under my notes column on my spreadsheet, I wrote the word interesting because I was interested in him. I just didn't know where he would go in the draft, and so it was cool that they actually drafted him. And just looking at his highlights and everything, I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to play for the Bills and his rookie season. I just don't know if he's going to start. I think it might be between him and Rapp.
Yeah, he's taken more of that strong safety role, at least as of right now. Like the in the box, he had 21 tackles for loss or something like that. And he had 7 sacks, which is a lot for a safety. So he was that kind of midfield coverage, in the box sort of safety. They didn't ask him to do a lot of center field Micah Hyde stuff where you're covering deep,
Yeah, for sure. So Mike Edwards that they signed during the offseason, he's going to be the free safety, and the strong safety is going to be between Rapp and Bishop.
Yeah. I could see a situation, though, where they get him snaps, even if those 2 other guys win, just based upon maybe if they're seeing Travis Kelce or, on coverage or whatever, and they need to cover a tight end or something like that on certain rundowns or whatever. I could see them deploying him in some way, shape, or form, even if he's not a starter, in certain packages.
For sure. Or if Rapp, dives his head into too many players and gets too many penalties, they might be like, oh, well, let's play Bishop a little bit more.
What if Bishop wins the starting job and Taylor Rapp takes that role of being that closer to the line safety, that Jordan Poyer was kind of like a safety linebacker at some point last year, with injuries and everything. So maybe they do that.
It'll be interesting. And they still got Cam Lewis, who can play corner or safety, in Hamlin. I don't know how long that's going to go, and they have Kendall Williamson as safety also.
I mean, Cole Bishop is he's a big guy, 6'2", 207 pounds, and he's really, really athletic. He's at a 9.8 RAS score, which is out of 10 for relative athletic score. He tested really well in that. So there's a lot of things the Bills, our 2 biggest needs, John, correct me if I'm wrong, were wide receiver and safety that we were banging the drum on all off season, and they hit it with the first 2 picks of their draft. So you got to be excited about that as a Bills fan.
And I think they hit almost all of our needs. So we had defensive end. So they got edge, Javon Solomon, Troy, right?
Yep.
We were talking about defensive tackle, and we got DeWayne Carter from Duke. And then cornerback. So DaQuan Hardy, Penn State in the 6th round, right? So that fills something. And those were the top 2 tiers. Then we had offensive lineman, which they drafted 3 of, running back, which they drafted, and then we had special teams, kicker, punter, and special teams. And that linebacker can play special teams. We have That corner can play punt returner. One of the underdrafted free agents is a punter. So they did really well overall as far as needs are concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean they knocked it out of the park. So we went, Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Cole Bishop, safety, DeWayne Carter, the defensive tackle out of Duke. Real quick, let me read the write up about Cole Bishop from Chris Trapasso. He said, large, intimidating safety with magnificent movement skill, the QB of the defense. So this is kind of important too, because he was a QB of the defense. The Bills are kind of missing that right now because Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer were so well back there, worked so well together back there. He says he aligns everywhere, can wear many hats, excelled as a slot defender and versus tight ends in coverage, and runs the alley on outside runs as well as any safety in the class. Ball skills and tackling must improve. Short arms need filled. So Chris gave that an A-. He did give the Keon Coleman a C- grade, but he gave the Cole Bishop an A- grade. So let's talk about DeWayne Carter. We spent most of the time on the first few draft picks. We already talked about Ray Davis, but round 3 pick, DeWayne Carter, defensive tackle on out of Duke. John, what did you think about this pick? You mentioned it filled a need. The Bills haven't drafted a defensive tackle really highly. Geez, I don't even know if they've drafted one since Ed Oliver. I'm trying to think. I don't remember them ever drafting one, to be honest. So, this was a significant thing because they haven't drafted one this high, or they haven't even drafted one since that draft, which was 2019, I believe, 2018, 2020. But yeah, I mean, I like the pick. It sounds like he's a backup to Ed Oliver. So I would have been happy with a 3-tech or a 1-tech defensive tackle, a big guy that either, takes on 2 blockers, or a guy like DeWayne Carter is more of a penetrator, but I mean, it sounds like a good pick. Sounds like he's going to get, again, reps this season, as a rotational piece, and they definitely missed that, and they haven't been able to find really good defensive tackles in the last few years behind Oliver and Daquan.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think Carter could maybe play either position, potentially. They did get Austin Johnson and Deshaun Williams during free agency and re-signed Daquan Jones. I do think Carter is going to be a significant factor in the rotation, though. I think he's super powerful. He's obviously very strong. He gets great penetration. That's what she said. And I think he can disrupt the passer and obviously still play a factor of the run game. I think it's a really great pick. And I'm glad that they were able to get a 3rd-round pick with their trade down moves.
Yeah, that was, I mean, we were worried about it the night of, so we haven't talked about that real quick. Trading, we talked about it in the Twitter space, but we didn't talk about it here. Trading back with the Chiefs so the Chiefs could get Xavier Worthy. I mean, at this point, with that trade down, I mean, the Bills obviously didn't see that Xavier Worthy was worth drafting. He was worthy of their pick at 28 because they would have picked him, but at the same time, you just got to hope that Brandon Beane knows better than the Kansas City Chiefs GM, that he's a better assessor of value, because the Bills picked another wide receiver instead. But even so, I'm so glad that they did that, because they got that 3rd-round pick, right? So that was huge. Just because they didn't have one. They thought they were going to get one from the Tremaine Edmonds, comp pick from him going to the Bears, but they ended up getting a 4th instead. So
yeah, and how about the balls on Beane to be like, I don't give a shit about trading picks with a rival. I wanted to do what's best for my team, and this is what I think is best for my team. We're gonna do this, and I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I do.
Now it's gonna suck when it's January and Xavier Worthy beats us for a touchdown in the playoffs, but I admire Beane right now in the moment.
He's got the biggest balls ever. I mean, big ball Beane, right? But yeah, as soon as that first pass goes for a touchdown, be like, God damn it, Brandon. Oh, yeah.
But you also don't want to take a player to not go on another team, even though it's not good for you either, right? You don't want to do that.
No. I would say it would have been nice. So, if they did draft a 2nd wide receiver, I would have wanted him to, obviously not Xavier Worthy fast, because that's just fast. It hasn't existed until just recently, until he came into the NFL. But fast speed, faster than what they have on their roster, right? I would have wanted a guy like that, a guy that can stretch the field. And whether that would have been Troy Franklin, which, we kind of wanted, a guy like that, or an A.D. Mitchell or something like that, a field stretcher, that would have been nice. to go along with Keon Coleman. I like the Keon Coleman pick, but I would have liked them to get another one of those guys. Because Josh Allen can take advantage of it just like Patrick Mahomes can. I mean, they can both throw bombs, so let's give them someone to throw bombs to.
I think that's in the cards for next year. I think they have a ton of draft capital next year. They got a lot of young players now that are not that fast, but they're still fast and really good. You got Khalil Shakir, you got Dalton Kincaid, you just got Keon Coleman, James Cook is on the roster. All these guys are under 25 years old and are going to help Josh Allen. I think that I'm not worried about the offense this year. I agree that they're going to need that other factor. They try to do it with, Deontay Hardy or whoever. But I think we're going to have to wait another year on getting that extra piece.
Yeah, I think you're right. They did. You mentioned they have a minimum of 10 picks next year in the draft, and that doesn't even include like the comp picks that they could get for some of the other players that have gone. So yeah, you're right. It could be in the cards very early next year too. You never know within the draft where someone like that, could fall. And, I don't want to give up on Justin Shorter just yet. I know a lot of people are thinking he might be a guy. He hasn't proven anything yet. I haven't, you never heard like really glowing things about him from the media and training camp. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm excited though. I'm excited. And it's not like Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel don't have any speed. Like Curtis Samuel, I believe was like a 4.37 40, I want to say. So like, that's really fast. That's faster than...
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I didn't even think about Curtis Samuel when I was talking about all that. He's had terrible quarterback play in his career, and he's been productive despite that. He's going to be a factor, too, for sure.
He had a 4.31 40-yard dash, and he's only like 27, so it's not like the guy's like 31 where, when we got John Brown, he was probably almost 30. He was probably 28 or something like that. I guess it's not that much younger or older than Curtis Samuel, but yeah, I'm excited to see what Curtis Samuel could be that deep threat for us this year, and we're not talking about it. So he could be this year's John Brown. So maybe we didn't need that guy. Maybe I'm just making this all up in my head. Maybe it doesn't matter. So next pick. So we talked about DeWayne Carter. Real quick, I'm going to give Chris Passo's grade on that. He said an active, high-energy interior rusher, which is what I hear a lot about DeWayne Carter in general, like high motor, like very, like never gives up sort of guy. Rusher who's on the ground a bit more than what's desired because of his frenetic style, but it also gets him to the football more often than most DTs. He flashes of the swim move, and spin just needs to utilize them more often. Length is a plus, and he works hard versus the run. There's some power too. He fills a niche need on Buffalo's defensive front and needs to use his length better on passing downs. So
yeah, I love it. I think he's great. I love those first three picks. I think are awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about the first three, and Trapasso gave it a B+ grade for that one. So we're gonna wrap up this part 1 recap of the Buffalo Bills 2024 draft. Later this week, we are going to release the second part where we talk about rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7, and also the undrafted free agents that the Bills have signed. So be sure to check in on that. So for me, Nate, go Bills, and we'll talk to you guys again very soon.
Find us out in the parking lot. We got the tailgate.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.